Imagine you're standing in the middle of a beautiful, babbling brook. But instead of soaking in the scenery, you're holding a shovel, drenched in sweat, face turning bright red, trying to straighten the water. You're literally yelling at the stream, "Why are you so curvy? Just go in a straight line, it's faster." Sounds crazy, right? But that is exactly how Henry spent 40 years of his life. And honestly, it might be exactly what you're doing right now without even realizing it. Henry was an architect. In Henry's world, everything was a perfect line. Angles had to be exactly 90 degrees. Columns had to be perfectly plumb. To Henry, life was supposed to be a straight line from point A to point B, driven by maximum efficiency. Henry's wife, Clara, was an artist, a bit of a dreamer who preferred to let things happen naturally. Then there was their teenage son, Leo, who was going through a rebellious phase, or as Henry called it, the urgent repair required phase. One day, Henry decided to buy an old cabin in the countryside for family weekends. The cabin was gorgeous, but it came with a wild backyard. The grass grew in patches, wildflowers tangled together without any rhyme or reason, and most notably, there was a massive old oak tree that leaned heavily to one side. Its branches created a stunning canopy of shade, but to Henry's eyes, it was structurally incorrect. If you've got a leaning tree in your life right now, maybe a difficult boss or a stubborn habit, go ahead and hit that like button. Just a gentle tap though. Don't try to fix the button. Back to Henry. On move-in day, he stood there with his hands on his hips, looked at the garden, and declared, "This place needs discipline." He started his project. Henry didn't do relaxing. He spent the entire weekend pulling weeds. He bought rope and stakes, trying to force the rose bushes to grow vertically instead of climbing freely. But his biggest enemy was that leaning oak. He saw it as a personal insult to the laws of gravity. He thought, if I don't fix this, it's going to fall. So, Henry went to war. He bought heavy-duty steel cables. He drove concrete pilings into the ground on the opposite side. He looped the cables around the trunk and used a winch to crank the tree straight. Every day, he'd give it another turn. He wanted to save the tree from itself. Clara saw what he was doing and said, "Honey, that tree has survived a lifetime of storms because of that lean. Its roots grew deep on the other side to balance it out. You're hurting it." Henry brushed her off. "You don't understand the engineering, Clara. Straight is stable. I'm fixing it." At the same time, Henry applied the cable and concrete strategy to Leo. Leo loved to paint, but Henry wanted him to study economics. Leo wanted long hair. Henry wanted a buzz cut. Every dinner became a strategy meeting where Henry tried to realign Leo's thoughts to match his own. A month went by. The garden looked like a boot camp. The rose bushes looked miserable because their stems were meant to curve toward the sun. The grass was gone, leaving the soil dry and cracked because there was no ground cover to hold the moisture. And the oak? It looked stressed. The cables were biting deep into the bark. Even though it was midsummer, the leaves were turning yellow. One sweltering Saturday afternoon, Henry was cranking the winch one more notch. Sweat was pouring down his face. He muttered, "Just a little bit more, and you'll be straight." Suddenly, ping! The steel cable snapped under the tension. The wire whipped through the air with incredible force, shattering the expensive wooden fence Henry had just finished painting. It whistled past Henry's head, knocking his hat off, and landed with a massive splash in the square artificial pond he'd just dug. Henry fell backward into the mud, covered in muck. But the disaster wasn't over. The oak tree, having been forced under extreme tension for so long, didn't just snap back. Its roots, damaged by a month of being pulled the wrong way, started to rip out of the ground. With a sickening crack, the oak groaned and toppled over. But it didn't fall where Henry wanted. It crashed right onto the garage, the place where Henry kept his prized collection of fixing tools. This is a good moment to share this with a friend who is feeling a bit too strained by life. Send it to them and say, "Don't let your cables snap." Henry sat there in the wreckage. Broken fence, fallen tree, crushed garage, and covered in mud. He had tried to fix everything, and he ended up breaking it all. Just then, Leo walked out. He looked at his dad, the tree, and the ruins. Henry braced himself for a joke, or at least a teenage eye roll, but Leo didn't say anything. He walked over to the garden hose, turned it on, and quietly started washing the mud off his father's legs. "Dad," Leo said softly, without his usual defiance, "do you know why I like to draw trees?" Henry shook his head, too exhausted to argue. "Because no tree is perfectly straight," Leo said. "Their beauty comes from how they bend to find the light. When you tried to force it to be straight, you broke the very thing that helped it survive." That sentence from his 16-year-old son hit Henry harder than the snapping cable. Henry looked over at Clara. She was standing in the doorway with 2 glasses of lemonade. She gave him that compassionate smile, the one he'd almost forgotten because he'd been so busy trying to fix her into being more organized. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He lay there listening to the crickets in his ruined garden. He remembered the let them theory he'd glanced at once but dismissed as being for lazy people. He realized then, control is not love. Interference isn't always help. The next morning, Henry did something he'd never done. He went into the garden without a shovel or a rope. He just brought a folding chair. He sat next to the fallen oak. Now that it was horizontal, it formed a beautiful natural bridge over the small creek. He watched squirrels scurrying along the trunk. He saw tiny weeds, now wildflowers, starting to sprout in the upturned dirt. Henry realized the tree had a new purpose in its fall, a new beauty it never had while standing. He called Leo outside. "Son," Henry said, "I'm not going to make you study economics anymore. And the hair? If you like it long, keep it. Just promise me you'll wash it occasionally." Leo looked at him, stunned. "For real, Dad?" "Yeah. I realized I'm not the architect of your life. I'm just the gardener. And a good gardener observes what the plant needs, rather than forcing it to grow a certain way." From that day on, Henry changed his tactics. He stopped trying to fix his wife. When Clara lost her keys for the 10th time that month, instead of lecturing her on key management systems, he just went out and had 5 spare sets made and hid them around the garden. Problem solved, no feelings hurt, and the house felt lighter. His garden changed too. He stopped pulling every weed. He just trimmed them so they wouldn't choke the roses. He let the bushes grow toward the sun. The result? The garden became more vibrant than ever. The birds came back to nest because they found the safe, messy corners that Henry's neatness had destroyed. Henry learned a $1 million lesson. We often confuse caring with controlling. When you try to fix someone's emotions, you're telling them their feelings are wrong. When you try to fix someone's path, you're taking away their chance to learn how to walk. And most importantly, when you try to fix everything around you to suit your needs, you turn yourself into a high-tension cable just waiting to snap. Drop a comment below about something you used to try to fix, but finally realized you should just let go. Was it your partner's hair? Your kids' hobbies? I'll be reading them all. Henry's story reminds us of the art of detachment. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to let people be who they are and let events unfold as they should. It's like trying to smooth out the surface of a wavy lake with your hands. The more you splash, the more ripples you create. The only way to get a smooth surface is to do nothing. Leave it alone, and it will settle itself. Henry is still an architect, but now he designs houses that flow with the natural terrain instead of leveling the hills. And he's much happier. He's no longer the man screaming at the stream. He's the man sitting on the bank, tossing in a leaf, and watching it find its own way to the sea. Life isn't a broken machine waiting for you to repair it. It's a garden waiting for you to tend it. Some things break not so you can glue them back together, but so you can learn to see the beauty in the pieces. Stop trying to be the hero who saves the world while your own soul is fraying from the tension. Put down the screwdriver, take a deep breath, and trust that sometimes things will be okay, even if, or especially because, you didn't step in. Thanks for listening. Live like water, not like concrete. See you next time.